This is the third and final in my short series interacting with a recent Frank Turek video. And in this one, I'm just going to interact with this slide that he used in his presentation, where he gives 6 points to summarize his response to those who say it was immoral for God to kill the Canaanites. His first response is, well, if there is no God, why is any Old Testament atrocity wrong? As I've already noted, this is based on the false premise that if you are not a theist, you have no ground for objective morality, which is patently false. You could, for example, be a moral Platonist and an atheist. But of course, it's also irrelevant because regardless of whether a person themselves has an objective view of morality or not, they're still asking a Christian, based on the Christian's professed moral objectivism, how can you, as a Christian, justify the slaughter of civilians being commanded by a perfect, all-powerful being? That's the question the Christian has to address. And any attempt to talk about the alleged morality of atheists is just a deflection from that central question. The second point he says is this: is God arbitrary, or does he give reasons for judging people in the Old Testament? And he says, well, he gives reasons. For example, they were squatters in the land who had been there for 400 years. But of course, this equivocates. The fact that you give reasons doesn't entail that those are morally sufficient reasons. The fact that people have been living in a land for 400 years is not of itself morally sufficient to kill all the men, women, children, and infants living in that land. And I'm pretty sure Tariq would know that today. If one group in one part of the world started massacring another group who the first group believed had been unlawfully squatting in the land for 400 years, I'm pretty sure Turek wouldn't say, oh, the slaughter of men, women, children, and infants is justified in this case because these people are squatters who do not have legal right to the land. The third point he says here is, well, why complain that God doesn't stop evil, but then complain when he does? So what he's trying to say here is that, well, atheists always say, why doesn't God stop evil? And yet the Canaanites had a very evil culture. And when God tried to stop that evil culture, now they get angry and they blame God. But of course, and I should say the example that Torah gives here is the worst thing Canaanites did was child sacrifice. And so God was punishing and stopping the child sacrifice, and atheists are unhappy about that. But of course, the issue here isn't that God stopped child sacrifice. The issue is that he commanded the killing of children and women and men and infants and animals. I'm pretty sure Turek understands that. So this just seems like a disingenuous deflection again. Fourth point, he says, is God committing murder by ending lives on earth? And he says, no, like God has no obligation to keep lives in existence in perpetuity. So he's not murdering people if he just ends their lives. But the issue here isn't about immediate divine action in the world. Really, the primary issue here is about human beings committing atrocities on other human beings and claiming that they have a divine right or divine mandate to do so. And that is a problem when human beings are killing other human beings. So again, this is a deflection. The issue isn't about God directly killing anybody. The fifth reason he gives is, well, God has the right to usher people into the next life, whether they are 2 years old or 82 years old. And he says people never die, they just change location. Note what he's saying here is usher into the next life is a pretty shameful, bald euphemism for slaughtering people in close contact killing with implements like spears and swords. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about bludgeoning people and stabbing people and cutting people up into pieces so that they die. We're not just talking about, quote, ushering people into the next life. And finally, he says the Old Testament theocracy was unique and temporary. It was not the ideal for all time, but the means to a promised new covenant. Okay, the fact that something is temporary doesn't mean it was morally justified. I'm pretty sure that Turk would understand that rape is always wrong. And this is one of the great ironies with these apologists like Turek. They seem to understand that rape would always be wrong, and there could never be a morally justifiable reason to rape. And yet they're comfortable saying that there was a unique and temporary situation where God had to command the massacre of men, women, children, and infants. And the moral incoherence there is pretty bold. So anyway, these are the 6 reasons that Turek gives in defense of the killing of Canaanites, which is a genocide by legal definition and also ethnic cleansing. It's a terrible apologetic, and it is a shame to the body of Christ, and it discredits Christians to a skeptical world.